Okay. All right. So, hi everybody. Yes, we are going to here continue on Mahayana Buddhism. And I will also be doing another one on this with the whiteboard because I need to kind of draw pictures to really explain things. But I really pulled my back today and it hurts. And I don't think I can kind of be twisting around a lot for doing the whiteboard. So yeah, I'll be better tomorrow. And we'll do it tomorrow, but I just need to get some stuff out here. Okay, so anyways, where we ended last time was we went through how Mahayana Buddhism developed with new scriptures, new teachings, new ideas, the concept of the bodhisattva, these sort of super godlike beings who can exist out there in the heavens, who can help you with things in this life, and also can guarantee that this is your last birth. If you have faith in them, they will guarantee that this will be your last incarnation birth here on earth, and you'll be brought into their heaven, and then from there brought into nirvana. And that's basically the thrust of the Pure Land sect of Buddhism, which is going to become a very popular sect within Mahayana Buddhism. And then so anyways, I don't want to say everything. You can see the last lecture, we sort of talked about that. And then the triple body doctrine of Buddhahood is another key idea, how the Buddha gets deified in Mahayana Buddhism. Well, to continue, what I want to talk about here is the Madhyamika school with Nagarjuna. Okay, and this is around 200 AD, or the Common Era, where Nagarjuna was very much a logician, a Buddhist philosopher, very much committed to logic. And he takes the teachings of Siddhartha, of the Buddha, and follows them through to their logical conclusion. And he develops and introduces two new ideas that become extremely important in Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, and especially we cannot at all understand Zen Buddhism until you get his key ideas that he introduces. Now, his school, the Madhyamika school, is a school that actually does eventually become extinct, but the ideas that he developed in this school at that time, second century of the Common Era, have remained, okay, and very, very influential in the rest of Mahayana Buddhism, and also in Tibetan Buddhism, very influential in Tibetan Buddhism. Now, this is basically here, I'll read this to you. And again, I need the whiteboard to really explain it and give you a sense of it. But I also want you to have this written text here in front of you as a slide, okay? That'll help you because it's hard to do both. So he held that since, if you remember the Buddha's teachings, Siddhartha's teachings, that this realm of samsara, this realm of rebirth is, again, the key doctrine is that it is impermanent, right? Remember, the doctrine of impermanence is one of the marks of existence. One of the characteristics of the nature of reality is that there is nothing here of unchanging, permanent substance, even though we have the experience of continuity, if you remember, okay? And so that instead, really, reality is like a flow, a process. Remember those sort of like dominoes, those dharmas, they come into being, cause the next one to come into being and then cease to exist. Remember that flow of dharmas that make up reality? They're sort of the tidbits that make up reality. They're just like, the frames in a film. One replaces the next, replaces the next. Each new cell in the body replaces an old cell. Okay, when the old one dies off, the new one is there, and then it's to be replaced by another new one. So we're like a constant flow. All right, moment by moment, cells are being replaced. Likewise, with all of reality, there is nothing there that's a permanent, unchanging substance. There's a constant flow and process. Okay. Now, he adds the idea to this, is that if this is the nature of reality, everything is impermanent. There's no solidity of substance, permanence of substance of any kind, okay? He also added the idea that in terms of reality here, samsara, nothing can exist in and of itself. Nothing is truly independent, self-subsistent. Okay, everything depends upon something else for its existence. Okay, so I depend upon the air to breathe, the food that I eat, the ground that I stand on. I am dependent upon my whole environment in so many ways for my very existence. I cannot exist independently in and of myself, separate from all that is. right? And I cannot create myself out of nothing, all right? I'm just a part of this flow of the universe, a part of this mega ecosystem we call life, where everything is totally interdependent. Nothing can exist in and of itself. Okay, hopefully you kind of get that. And just again, just to highlight that idea, this is why, you know, the history of human thought is always held that there's only one being, one reality that can exist independently in and of itself, and that is God. Okay, that has been the rather normative conception here, is that there's only one reality that could be truly regarded as self-subsistent, existing in and of itself independently. It is not dependent upon something else for its creation. We've always, again, a very common idea is it's this being we call God. Okay, but here in Buddhism, that doesn't come into play here because there isn't a belief in a transcendent type God as such. Okay, that's not a part of Buddhism. So the thing is that since here everything is in constant flow and process, nothing can exist in and of itself, he then held that really, when I look at me and I look at you and the tree, the dog, the house, the car, the this, the that, whatever, all the things that make up this world, everything, he held, is fundamentally empty of own beingness. Okay, I like that phrase. It's really kind of, I think, makes it more clear as to what shunyata, emptiness, the doctrine of emptiness means. That everything is empty of own beingness, meaning that I do not have my own beingness that's totally independent, solid, unchanging, can exist in and of itself. Is like, no, there is no such thing. There is no solid, unchanging beingness that can exist independently, self-subsistently, right? In and of itself, that doesn't ever change, is independent from everything else. There's no such thing, okay? So I don't have any of my own beingness. I'm dependent on so much around me, right? As I'm a part of this flow of reality. And so the same thing can be said of the next entity, of you, the tree, the dog, the this, the that. Everything is empty of own beingness. So if there's nothing there as far as distinct solid substance that's unchanging, okay, and independent, that makes up me, that makes up you, and there is no such solid substance, beingness of any kind like that, right, then there's no basis for difference, for distinction, for differentiation, right? Everything becomes empty of own beingness. That's where I like to kind of like erase the circle of a me, erase the circle of you, erase the circle of boundary of you, of me, of the tree, of the dog, of whatever, right? It's like erasing those boundaries because there's no basis in terms of substance that differentiates, distinguishes, sets me apart from you. We are all interdependent entities, if you want to even call us entities. We're all interdependent in this mega flow of life, all right? And so here, again, he held that everything is empty of own beingness. So everything then, in terms of the realm of samsara, if you erase those boundaries of what we think are separation and differences. I'm a different substance from you and from this and that. And I erase those boundaries saying, no, there is no basis to independent beingness of me and a you and a this and a that. And I erase those boundaries, is like, whoo, it all becomes one through emptiness. Everything here in the realm of samsara, the realm of rebirth, that what we call, you know, this created universe, whatever, you know, nature, the world, what is empty of own beingness, okay? So everything becomes one through emptiness. It's a key idea that Nagarjuna develops here in his school, the Madhyamika school, okay? And so then, he does that to the realm of samsara, and then he puts over here nirvana. Maybe I should not share. I don't know, whatever. I don't know, Dini. I don't know if I should share or not. Do you want to see me or not? How well you can see me, whatever. Can I make myself bigger? No, I don't think so. Okay. So you have samsara here, say as one circle, and then there's nirvana over here as another circle. Okay, imagine that. And so Siddhartha, when he taught, he blatantly juxtaposed those two, that samsara is this and it is different from nirvana. Samsara, if you remember, is impermanent, is the realm of suffering, is the realm of rebirth. That is samsara. Whereas nirvana is the opposite. Nirvana is the realm of no more suffering, no more rebirth. And instead of impermanent, Siddhartha held it was permanent, and that they are opposites to each other. Okay. Now, what Nagarjuna does is he collapses that juxtaposition. He held that, well, now logically, if you look at it, here's samsara, there's nirvana. He held that, well, can nirvana exist in and of itself independently? Is it at all a meaningful concept in and of itself in an independent way? No. Nirvana depends upon samsara for its existence. If there was no samsara, it would make no sense to talk about a nirvana. So nirvana does not exist independently. Nirvana does not have its own beingness. Okay, it depends upon samsara for its existence. And so if that's the case, then just as samsara is empty of own beingness, likewise nirvana is empty of own beingness. And then again, it's like, well, then what is there for the basis of any kind of differentiation, any kind of distinction? In what way are they actually separate things if there's no solid, unchanging substances that can separate them? And he held, likewise, just as everything became one through emptiness in samsara, likewise, samsara and nirvana become one through emptiness. Okay? If nirvana is empty and samsara is empty, then it follows, in terms of the syllogism, that nirvana is samsara. Whoa. So now what happens here? This is mind-blowing. He now proposes that following things through logically in terms of the teachings of Siddhartha and the doctrine of impermanence, etc., he held that really nirvana is samsara. Nirvana is not some other reality out there, somewhere else outside of samsara, but rather it's right here, right now. Nirvana and samsara, they become one through emptiness. Okay, they become one through emptiness. The word for emptiness is shunyata, if I didn't make that clear. Okay, shunyata is the word for emptiness. All right, so very, very interesting. Well, he comes up with this idea, then of course he has to kind of deal with some little tweak things a bit here. He then has to come up with another doctrine, the doctrine of two truths. Okay. So here, let me just read this here for you. Excuse me. The doctrine of emptiness or shunyata. Samsara is empty, and everything is one through emptiness in terms of samsara. But then in addition, nirvana also is empty. It has no solid substance. It is also not self-subsistent, but depends upon samsara for its existence. So then the syllogism follows. If they are both empty, then they are one. They become one through emptiness. Okay? Conclusion, samsara is nirvana. So now, to become enlightened here in Buddhism is simply to awaken to this truth, the truth of the doctrine of emptiness. To see that really is all one through emptiness, and that nirvana, that ultimate reality, is not somewhere else, but is right here, right now. Nirvana is right here, right now. And that is now what enlightenment is all about. So it's no longer seen as being two opposites the way Siddhartha originally taught. Okay, so then he, as I mentioned, he has to develop the next doctrine, the doctrine of two truths. That at the higher level of truth, that there's a higher level of truth, an absolute truth, that, and there's only one key teaching in that higher absolute level of truth, and that is the doctrine of emptiness. That's the only truth. That is the fundamental truth, is that it's all one through emptiness, right? And that really, you can't say too much. You should just keep your mouth shut in terms of reality, because there's no, language is very much positioned upon a world of distinction. of this world of duality, of a this and a that, glass, water in, water out, it always works with opposites of this versus that and boundaries. So language inherently embraces the idea of distinctions and differentiations because that's how it operates as language. So when you get to the higher truth of emptiness, to even try to put it into words really is going to be a distortion of the truth. It can't ever really be successfully put into language and words, so to speak, okay? So anyways, there's only the higher truth of emptiness. And this is where they would say, and in the film I want you guys to watch about Buddhism in Japan, and they'll have Zen monks, or abbots, running Zen monasteries in Japan. There'll be an abbot there who will say this, that for those who know, what Buddha is really, for those who really understand Buddhism and know what the Buddha is really, they'll say, and they'll see, and they'll know that there is no Buddha. But for those who do not know what Buddha is really, who haven't yet understood, who haven't attained that enlightenment, who've seen the truth of the doctrine of emptiness, for them, there is still a Buddha. Okay? And that is the lower level of truth, the relative level of truth. And so that lower level of truth, there is the religion of Buddhism. And in that lower level of truth, I am unenlightened. I am in samsara. I am trapped in the cycle of rebirth. Okay? That is the lower level of truth. And so then I take up the journey to seek enlightenment. And as I do the meditation and I do the practice and I come to realize the truth of emptiness, then it's like, whoosh, I no longer need Buddhism. Buddhism is only a relative truth that is a vehicle. It is the means to help me get to the higher truth of emptiness. Once I get to the higher truth of emptiness, I can throw away Buddhism. Okay, I can throw it away. So the higher truth is there is no polarization of nirvana versus samsara. There really is no polarization of Buddhahood versus non-Buddhahood. That, I am not the Buddha, I am not enlightened. It's like, no, that's only at the lower level of the unenlightened mind is trapped in that. But once you attain enlightenment, you see that that is not a truth. The truth is, I already am Buddha. The truth is, all that is Buddhahood. The truth is, it is all one through emptiness. The truth is, nirvana is right here, right now. Okay? Hopefully you guys get that. So that here, Buddhism is just a tool to help you realize the higher truth of emptiness. Okay? And that's why here at this lower level, there is a Buddha. For those who do not know what he is really. I mean, and here I'm using that language, that terminology there, because there's an exact quote of an abbot at a Zen monastery in the film on Buddhism in Japan that I want you to see. Okay, because then it'll make a lot more sense. Everything will make more sense. Okay, so these are the two key doctrines that Nagarjuna introduces into the picture here in Mahayana Buddhism that become very influential in many schools. As I mentioned, very influential in Tibetan Buddhism as well. And you cannot understand Zen Buddhism without understanding these two ideas. Okay, all right. So in Zen Buddhism, excuse me, Zen Buddhism is basically the meditation school. The word Zen, as you can see here, is the Japanese word for Chan, which was the word for it in China, which is actually the Chinese version of jhana, which is the Sanskrit word for meditation. Okay, so in India, when Sanskrit was a language there, it was known as the meditation school. Okay, jhana, as you can see there. And then when it goes over to China, they called it Chan. And when it goes over to Japan, it's becomes known as Zen. But it's basically the meditation school. Okay. And the story, the tradition about it is that it goes back, going to the second paragraph first here, that it was brought to, do I have that here? Oh, no, it's not here. Well, let me just read what I've got here, okay? It was brought from India to China by the fellow, a monk, excuse me, I shouldn't have drank water now, I burped, Bodhidharma, who lived around 520, or around the year 520 is when he brought it into China. And he is held to be the 28th patriarch in a lineage of transmission of enlightenment from the Buddha on downward. Okay, from the Buddha on downward, it's often called the lamp of enlightenment, got passed on from master to disciple. Okay, one after another, after another, after another, from the Buddha on downward to Bodhidharma, who's the 28th in this lineage of this transmission of enlightenment. And the story is it goes way back to the time of the Buddha in his lifetime when he was there, and he had his disciples in front of him. And he gave one day what's often called the wordless sermon, okay, the sermon without words. And he's there in front of his audience of disciples, and they're just all there sitting in front of him. And he just picks up a flower and holds it. And one of his disciples, Kashyapa, all of a sudden, he just, like everybody else is waiting for a sermon. They're waiting for some words of wisdom to reflect upon and philosophize over. But Kashyapa is there in meditation in front of Siddhartha, in front of the Buddha. And all of a sudden, he gets it. He becomes enlightened. And the Buddha sees that and he acknowledges that. And he says that he now passes on the lamp of enlightenment to his disciple Kashyapa. Because the truth enlightenment cannot be passed down through words or through the study of texts or through doing religious rituals and religious prayers. It's only through meditation and a kind of a transmission from master to disciple that enlightenment is passed on. Okay. And so this is the story of how enlightenment gets passed on. It comes through meditation. It's something that you just hope it just happens. All right. You can set yourself up for it through meditation and various things, but it just doesn't happen through studying texts and words and philosophizing, okay, or religious rituals and prayers. Right? This is what's distinctive about the meditation school. It emphasizes that you need to do the meditation. There's no other way to really get at that truth. It comes through this enlightenment experience. So anyway, this is a story that it has its origins with the Buddha. It gets passed down to Kashyapa, and then from there passed on again and again and again to various figures, all the way to Bodhidharma, who brings it then into China. Okay, so he brings it to China, and as you have it there, around 520, and there's a whole tradition. I think I have a slide or some pictures of. Yeah, Bodhidharma. Here's Bodhidharma at the Shaolin Temple. And so the story is that when Bodhidharma comes to China, Buddhism had already entered into China around 100, okay, of the Common Era. And there's a whole story about that. In the text, it says that the emperor at the time, Emperor Wu, had this dream, and this kind of visionary dream of this golden being, huge, giant golden being who was a being of such wisdom over in the West. And he sent some of his people to go and find who is this master of wisdom in the West. And so some of his officials went over to India. They discover Buddhism, and they come back bringing all kinds of Buddhist scriptures and texts, okay, from Sanskrit. And then they start translating all of these texts into Chinese. And I had mentioned this before, okay? They start translating them. This is when Pure Land sect comes into China, okay, and starts going around, and people, praying to Amitabha Buddha, to get into the Pure Land or the Western Paradise. All that starts going on, okay? So when Bodhidharma comes into China, he sees now the Chinese like, oh, okay, yes, they have all these scriptures, Buddhist scriptures, and they're busy translating them and studying them and philosophizing about them. And then others are praying to Amitabha Buddha and doing their rituals of having faith to get to the Pure Land, when they die type of thing. And he's thinking, oh, you guys are totally missing the point. It's all about meditation. Buddhism is about meditation. You can only attain enlightenment through meditation. Okay, and he was very austere in his meditation, and the tradition is that he meditated for 8 years nonstop, facing a wall at the Shaolin Temple. And he meditated for so long, right, that his legs atrophied and they had to be chopped off because, he couldn't use them anymore for sitting in meditation for so long. And the story is that he was so committed and disciplined that he had his eyelids cut off so that he wouldn't fall asleep. So this is all, again, the tradition about him. But that's how committed he was in terms of meditation, right? That kind of solid commitment day in, day out to meditate. So this is Bodhidharma. He had this reputation. He brings the meditation school to China, and that's where it's known as Chan, okay, as I mentioned earlier. And just to go back, hang on here. And however, in the 800s, the meditation school splits into two sects over the issue of whether or not enlightenment is something that can happen gradually or suddenly. Okay, there are those who held that you would kind of meditate and kind of have a little glimpse of it and kind of come back a little bit closer, and you kind of come back, and it's something that kind of happens a bit more gradually. All right, it's more of a gradual process. Then there were others who held that it was more radical. It was sudden, just out of the blue. You'd be there. It's like boom, you'd be enlightened. It's like whoa, wow, right? And in this sudden school, they held that sometimes you need to be shocked into enlightenment. And they developed the practice that it could happen when somebody's deep in meditation, just really focused, and they're meditating and meditating. And then when you shock the system by a beating, all right, literally just beating, and just that does something to the nervous system, and it almost like pushes you over the edge, and boom, you get enlightened. Okay, it gets shocked. Your whole system through shock kind of pushes you over the edge or something, and you become enlightened. And so that kind of gets associated with the sudden school of enlightenment. Well, then in the 1200s, the meditation school goes into Japan, and they're known as the Rinzai sect and the Soto sect, the sudden enlightenment or the gradual enlightenment school. Okay. And then in Japan, they have their own development of Japanese culture and arts that get very much linked in with Zen philosophy in various forms. Right? And so they develop haiku poetry, forms of calligraphy and art, the Japanese gardens, the use of koans, riddles that you would meditate upon, the tea ceremony, the use of archery. Okay, let me just check here. I don't think I have much here in terms of slides. Yeah. Well, here I'll just kind of talk a little bit about these. So when we get into Japan, let me just have a little sip of water. I wish I had. I really want you to watch the videos, okay? And anyway, in terms of in the history of Japan, in the imperial court, they found that Buddhism as a philosophy is something that could very much empower their warriors, the samurai warriors. And so, because it would create in them and inculcate in them a fearlessness that they would not fear death. That through the doctrine of emptiness, for example, there I am empty of my own being. And there's my opponent who is empty of his own being. And I become one with my opponent that I'm about to fight. We become one through emptiness. And that shifts your consciousness, right? So that you become highly intuitive. It's, anyways, I don't know how to all explain it, but there's profound things that can happen. And this is why it's so used in the martial arts, where you could be blindfolded and you could just sense what your enemy is about to do, where they're going to attack you, because you're relying on your deeper intuitive instinct, a different type of wisdom, a sense of connection with the opponent. So you almost know what they're about to do. Okay, so it can be very empowering and is very much used and brought into the martial arts and for the samurai warriors. And so they bring in Buddhist philosophy and teaching in the training. And as a result, over time, these then develop into certain rituals, as you'll see in that video of swordsmanship, with a big long stick and fighting with swords. It became then a spiritual practice of how you become one through emptiness, with that sword. You can just make the right moves and you can feel it. and you're guided more from within by instinct instead of from the head. Because here it's the mind that often is the enemy. The mind with the use of language and logic and reason that so objectifies the world as the separate object for me to manipulate, that then separates you from the world. You're then disconnected from the world. Okay. And so you want to eliminate that so that you are one with the world. You then become one with your opponent, one with the environment, and then you can feel and sense it. And you're a part of the flow of that environment and of what's around you. That's sort of a key thing that happens. So anyways, so the use of swordmanship, archery, where again, with a bow and arrow, there's the target, the bullseye that you're trying to get. And where you pull the arrow and it's like, I am empty of my own being. The target is empty of its own being. And I become one with the target. And through effortless action, all right, without, again, this is where Taoism is very influential here too. We'll be doing Taoism next, where you then become one with it all. And then it's just like through that oneness, and then it's without effort. It just happens. You can hit a bullseye, right? So this becomes a spiritual practice where they took things that were part of the training of the warriors. They then become spiritual practices to come to this place of emptiness. Okay, it's to enhance your practice, and as well, they'd also, of course, do the meditation. And so this will show up in Zen arts in all kinds of ways. The tea ceremony, for example, is a different kind of an example of how the idea of that nirvana and samsara are one. Okay, so here the idea is nirvana is not like something out there that is this ultimate reality that I have to leave this world to get to it over there, and there's this polarization of the present moment. This present reality is something I need to escape from, and it's evil, and I need to get rid of it in order to get to this higher, better place of nirvana. It's like, no, nirvana, ultimate reality, is right here, right now, in the present moment. In the present moment, right here. This is it. There's nowhere else to go. This is it right now in the present moment. And so with the green tea ceremony, what they do is they take the most mundane everyday activity. For me, it would be making my morning cup of coffee. All right. But for them, it's making their daily tea. Okay. You're taking the most mundane, daily, ordinary, unspiritual activity, like making your cup of tea. They take that. And this becomes the focus of being fully present in the moment of making that cup of tea as though this right now is ultimate reality. There's nowhere else to go, nowhere else to be, nobody else I need to be. I am the Buddha. I just need to wake up to that truth. Buddhahood is right here, right now, present in me, present in you, present in this cup of tea, present in the stick that I'm using, present in the bow and arrow I'm using, present in the nature around me. All this right now is Buddhahood, is nirvana. And so by just being fully present in the most ordinary activities, right? And that's when it's meant to evoke that enlightenment, to realize that truth, that nirvana is right here, right now. And I already am Buddha. Okay, I already am awakened. Enlightenment is right here now. I just need to wake up to it. It's dormant. It's just wake up to it. It's already there. Okay, and so this is how a lot of what Zen is about. Okay, and then they would use koans. I mentioned that earlier. I think it's, there we go, koans, K-O-A-N-S. These riddles to meditate upon that are, don't make a lot of sense. They're meant to, excuse me, they're meant to challenge our, verbal, logistic, rationalistic mind that always has distinctions and differentiations. Excuse me. And so, excuse me again, Jay Kaputski, I should maybe pause this. what did I say? Yeah, koans. So that, like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Right? Well, that makes no sense. And then there's a standard number, something like 15 to 1800 of them. And they all have sort of answers you could give. But as you'll see in the video that I want you to watch, okay, is it's not that if you come up with the right words of the answer, that's not it. It's how you say the answer, okay? How you give that answer. So you'll see in there that a monk is to go up before the abbot, and his koan was, does the dog have Buddha nature? And the classic answer that's expected to be given is he gives out a roar, kind of a thing. But the abbot can tell by how he roars, how he gives the answer, if it's coming from his head or coming from a deeper place. Like, the Japanese, they describe that there's a consciousness really at your core, in your belly, in your, what do you call it? The midsection here, the solar plexus kind of region there, just above the navel. That is your core, right? And that there's a consciousness there that they call hara. And you need to get out of your head here and get down there in your gut. And when you give the answer, right, it's coming from the core of your being. It's not coming from your head. It's not coming like, oh, that's the right answer that I'm going to give, yada, yada, yada. No. It's coming from the core of your being, because you've gone there. You've gone to that place of your core nature, of that core self, the true self, which is Buddha within. Okay, and that will come forth as a mighty, powerful roar, right? And this is the goal. That is sort of what they're trying to hear, to see if you've gotten there yet, if you've gotten out of your head into that core. And that is the whole goal, really. And so anyways, yeah, that's a bit of how this works, okay? And let me just see. I know I'm missing some things. I tell you, when I'm not doing this live in class, it's just not the same for me. Excuse me. Well, anyways, I am going to do a little bit of a whiteboard version, okay, because I don't like this, being in front of a screen like this. So I think I will end it there, and I'll see if I'm missing some things. Yeah, and I've got those posted for you in the Blackboard. Okay, okay, that's it for now for this, and whoopsie doops. Let's see here, stop recording. Okay, ciao.